Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am A. Ron, and this is the Inclusive Dad Podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, rate, or review the show on your favorite platform. We truly appreciate your feedback and would be honored if you shared the podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Today, my guest is Jey Young. Welcome to the show.
Hey, super happy to be here. Super excited to talk about inclusion with you.
Awesome. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
A little bit about me. I don't even know how to say it, but I'm a remarried dad. So I've been divorced. I was a single dad for about 3 years, and now I'm back. Remarried again. My beautiful wife. She's lovely. I have two kids that are in school now, a 7-year-old and a preschooler. So that's been a wild and crazy ride to get them into school this year. Um, my 9 to 5, I'm a mental health clinician. So I work with a lot of youth and families in an intensive outpatient therapy program. Additionally, I volunteer at church in different youth groups as well. And I host the Young Dad podcast, which is currently working its way to becoming more than just a fatherhood podcast and kind of branching out into some different directions that I'm really passionate about as well. So outside of that, that's a little bit about me. The last 3 years, I've done some beat writing for the Tri-City Dust Devils, high A affiliate of LA Angels. I'm a big baseball nerd. Love me some football, love me some fantasy sports. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell, more or less.
When do you sleep?
So I actually started doing this thing on my phone and with my watch to where I have wind down time from 10:15 to 11. And as long as I'm in bed and I sleep by 11 and wake up by 6, I get a good 7 hours,
Okay.
which is kind of like my sweet spot. So
Okay.
from the hours of 11 p.m. to 6 a.m.
There you go. That's awesome. And I was a guest on your show. Well, we recorded it a little while ago. So before this airs, I'm sure the episode will be out. So I'll link to that in the show notes. But thanks for having me
Yep.
on your podcast, too.
Of course, man. It was a really good conversation. So I highly recommend the listeners go and listen to that. Not because I'm biased at all whatsoever. I just feel like it's a really good conversation. We covered a lot of different topics.
Yeah.
Too many to even recall, but that should be out. Should be out by the time this comes out as well. So
Yeah. Awesome. So, first question is, what is your definition of inclusion?
my definition of inclusion, I've been thinking about this one since it's in your questionnaire and stuff. But my definition of inclusion is really just having equal access to the same things that everyone else has, especially for our kids, right? When you think of inclusion, you normally think of like education, because that's been a big battle since forever, right? You go back to pre-World War II, you go back to Civil War era, you go back to the Civil War era. The whole point of that was because things were divided, things were segregated, and there wasn't enough inclusion and integration. And so you go back and you look at history, how this has just been a battle for the last 100+ years. And it's sad that we are still fighting this battle today, just in a different form. But basically, it's just everyone being equal. Kids especially having equal access to their opportunity, to their education, and being able to be just kids and free and have fun and get to know each other and not have any pre-implied bias or um, stereotypes that make them think one way or another about their peers, because kids don't see that stuff, right?
Right.
Kids
Yep.
don't see kids don't see color, kids don't see hate, kids learn hate. Kids don't see color, kids learn hate. They learn all these different things. They're all taught behaviors. While naturally, we don't see those things. They're not a big thing until they're taught, until they're pointed out. So just
Yeah.
being equal to one another, everyone having the same access to the same opportunities. That's kind of my definition of inclusion.
That's great. Um, when you applied to be on the podcast, you identified yourself as a person with a disability. Do you want to go into that a little bit, or?
Yeah, most definitely. So growing up, I still have it, obviously, but affected me mostly when I was younger. So my disability is called Andersen-Tawil syndrome. Super rare. It's a mutation of the one of your genomes, and it affects your muscle specifically. So it's a neuromuscular disorder. And so what it does, it affects your like joints and your large muscle groups, to where the biggest part of it is something called periodic paralysis, to where your muscles just go really weak or you're unable to use them because they're feel like they're paralyzed and you can't move. So when I was a child, there was days where I literally couldn't get up out of my bed because I couldn't move my legs, I couldn't move my arms. There was days where I would be okay, a little bit better, and I would go to school, but I would be falling up the stairs. Or when I tried to run, I would waddle. Or when I would try to do different things, I just couldn't do them the same way as my kid, other kids. Didn't run as fast. I didn't walk as fast. I walked a little bit different. I walked a little bit funny, and I'm also like was a
Mm.
lot taller than my peers growing up. I grew really fast. By the time I got to my sophomore year in high school, everyone else was about the same height. So up until that point, I was always taller. I was a husky little boy, so I was a little chubby chub as well. And so all those things combined didn't really play well. Additionally, with Andersen-Tawil syndrome, I have a heart murmur as well, a heart condition. So I do have to be a little bit mindful of that. But as I've gotten older, as my muscles have gotten stronger, as I've taken more concentrated effort to learn about it, to get better, it's gotten better where I don't have attacks nearly as often. I maybe have once a quarter, to one every 3 to 6 months, and it lasts for maybe a day or two. And I'm just really stiff, really sore. It's hard to walk. It's hard to get up from chairs and whatnot. So I just have to be extremely mindful. There's no cure for it. Um, it's a it's genetic as well. So it runs in like the male genome. So I get it from my dad. One of my brothers who since passed away. Uh, he passed away a few years ago. He had it as well. His was a lot worse than mine. My dad's has gotten better as well with time, but his is also a bit worse than mine. So it's the same disease, it's the same mutation of the same gene, but the way it affects every individual is a little bit different.
Okay.
So it's a really cool, unique disease. I think 100,000 people in the world have it. So it comes from myself, and then my dad has it. His dad had it, and yada 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 before
Okay.
that. So it's one of those things. It's a gift of the family, I guess, through the male genome. Girls aren't really affected by it at all. If they are, it affects their heart mostly. Luckily, my girls are healthy, but it's something to monitor right now. And then
Yeah.
it affected my older sister by just kind of hitting her ankles, to where her ankles will get sore from time to time and feel like a little weak. So she just has to wear more supportive shoes and things like that. But outside of that, um, blessed all my girls are healthy. Lucky enough to have that as well. So
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Is that how did that affect you in school? Then did you were you
oh
on
yeah.
like were you on like an IEP or a 504, or that wasn't to the you didn't need to have one of those things?
No, it was, so the way it affected me in school was I was bullied a lot because I ran different. I ran a lot slower. Like PE teachers and stuff just didn't understand, like, why are you so big but you're not fast. You can't jump. You can't run as fast. You're not as
Right.
strong, kind of thing. Like you should be this big strong boy kind of thing. So I had this just like these expectations I just couldn't meet,
Right.
which sucked. And then I would just run and I would fall sometimes because my legs would just give out.
Sure.
My legs would give out going upstairs, or I couldn't walk upstairs. I'm like pulling myself up these stairs with all my strength, that I had those days. So that was extremely difficult. I didn't have any I didn't have any accommodations and whatnot in school. It would have been great if I did, even had a 504 plan or something, just to help accommodate that. Use of an elevator or something would have been amazing and super helpful to be able to do that. The other thing that happened to me too was that I was a troublemaker in school too, because I also have combined type ADHD, but that wasn't diagnosed back then.
Right.
Late 90s, early 2000s. I just was labeled as like a little boy who was just extremely smart, extremely intelligent. I did my work super fast. I never struggled with work at all. The work demand of school was never a thing. I graduated high school with a 3.8 GPA, maybe more. I don't remember at this point, but I graduated extremely capable academically. My bachelor's, I graduated cum laude, and so it's academics has never been hard. Work's always been easy. It's always come to me easy. Concept has always come to me easy because of my brain, how it works. But in school, it was really difficult because I would finish my work so quickly, I would get bored. And
Right.
then that boredom led to talking, and that talking led to, well, if I can't talk, what else can I do then?
Right.
And then so I would run through all the different things I could do. I'd read, play blocks, do all the different things, and everything was just boring so quickly. So that was something that was really hard. And then that would turn into trouble. And then you mix that boredom with the constant like bullying and things like that, which would create, a space for anger to fester essentially. So then there would be lash outs on other kids. I got in so many fights growing up. Um, I can remember at least a handful minimum, suspended at least once or twice a year for a couple days here and there for punching other kids, fighting other kids, throwing desks at other kids, throwing and just using my fist because I was just so angry because there's so much bullying and so much going on. And I'm
Right.
also like doing extremely well in school, but like I'm also extremely bored. So that's frustrating on top of that is that there's something that I can't control. There's something I'm really struggling with. And it's like, you're just telling me to sit down and be quiet when I literally can't do that.
Yeah.
So that was really difficult to do in itself. So that's kind of where I really struggled in school, was just behaviorally. Made it out okay. Once I got to, no, I can't even say middle school. I slowed down with that, but middle school is really, really where things change. Where I got puberty came and made my muscles a lot stronger. Where I got a lot stronger. Overall, I finally grew into my frame a little bit to where I could run, I could keep up, and I wasn't having attacks nearly as often. And then high school, same thing, just was really solid after that, into college and into adulthood after that. So after puberty, it was really great. But up until then, that first 12 years was really difficult. On top of that, you compound that with me living with my grandma. So my family dynamics are really different from all my other friends. And so there was just a lot of factors contributing to that anger and contributing to those outbursts as well.
Yeah. How did you? So you work with children in outpatient treatment. Like, how did you get into that, or what made you want to do that?
So my journey into like the field I'm in today has been nothing short of a journey. So when I started college at 18, I thought, okay, I'm going to go into special education. I'm going to be a sped K through 12 teacher. It's kind of where my heart lied, mostly because like, okay, math was too hard. And coming out of high school, I wanted to go to into neuroscience and become like a neurologist, more or less. And then I took calculus my senior year of high school, and that shit was really hard. And
Yeah.
so I gave up on that. And I'm like, no, I'm never doing that again. And so then I switched gears and went education. Like education is great. I loved it. I got about 2.5 years into that program, and I was on the precipice of applying for student teaching when a professor I had kind of scared me out of it. So I stopped, switched to business, hated business, and then I met my now ex-wife, and then kind of started working, and then stopped going to school. I worked for Sonic, ran a Sonic for a year. Worked for Sonic for a year and a half, ran the location for a year as a GM. I was like 21, and then 2021, and then my first daughter was born in 2017, right after I turned 22, and then life just kind of life after that. After that, I started working for Walmart as an assistant store manager. And then that was the next year and a half of my life, and then I worked for Pepsi for the next year after that, and then COVID happened, and then moved up here to Washington, and then started working for Lowe's, welcomed my second daughter, and then divorced in 2021. That's kind of when I started thinking, okay, I need to finish this degree of mine. It's been sitting
Hmm.
there. It's unfinished. I want to finish things. I want to show my girls, at least one of their parents, went to college, finished college, and whatnot, because that's something important to me. I have a high value on education.
Sure.
Different families have different perspectives on education, how high they value education, but I highly
Yeah.
value education. I think it opens a lot of doors that aren't, because I mean, without education, I wouldn't be working in the field that I am
Sure.
now. I'd be stuck working those not dead end jobs, but the high floor, low ceiling kind of jobs.
Yeah.
Best way to describe those. So finished my degree, got my bachelor's in human service, finished my bachelor's in human services with an emphasis in child and family welfare, and then just applied for this job that I'm in now. Washington, you can become an agency affiliated counselor. And so I got all my credentials, got all my training, things like that, to be able to do that with the agency I work with now.
Hmm.
And then since I have finished my master's in developmental psychology, so now I'm a master's level clinician in mental health. And so yeah, it's just been a wild and crazy ride. It's taken a long time. Took me 8 years to get my bachelor's, and since been able to go back and get my master's and whatnot too. So
That's awesome. Yeah, there was a few. It's been a couple or 3 years, I think, since I quit the job, but I worked at a mental health rehabilitation inpatient facility in my town. So I worked there for a couple of years. That was pretty crazy. Lots of very sad stories. We could have kids there from like 5 years old to 18. So some of the stuff those kids had gone through at five already is was crazy. Like
It's wild.
it's wild. So I understand some of that stuff, but yeah, that's how do you think like your experience in school affected like you wanting to help kids? Do you think that had an impact on it?
No, I would say I've always really enjoyed it. I've always
Okay.
really enjoyed working with kids. Even going back to high school, like my first job was at a pool, lifeguarding and teaching swim lessons. So I've always had this like love for working with children, teaching children, um, in like a non weird, creepy way. But there's always been this like desire to work with children, even
Sure.
going into special
Right.
education was something
Yep.
I really wanted to do, that I was really passionate about. As I've always had this feeling inside that I'm supposed to be working with youth and families in some capacity, whether that's teaching or obviously I found the right doors open. I walked through them and did the things I was supposed to do. So now I'm doing that work. So that's kind of how it transformed for me into actually getting into this field, to be able to work with youth and families, to be able to support them, walk their journeys with them, and go along for these different rides with them.
Yeah, that's great. So I've done two TEDx talks. My most recent one I did in April. I talked about how we can use empathy to be more inclusive. How do you think we can use empathy to be more inclusive in the world?
Well, I think as fathers, we need to teach our kids to have empathy. That's something that's very much lacking in our society today, is empathy. I don't think people understand what empathy is. There's Everyone wants to say, "Oh yeah, I have empathy. Oh yeah, I'm empathetic." You ask them to define it, they have no idea. Uh, and there's a big difference. I think people get empathy and sympathy confused very, very often and very easily. But empathy, the best way for me to describe it is being able to put yourself in that person's shoes and walk a mile. If you say, "Oh, I could do that," but you can only be like, "Oh yeah, well that would be a really hard mile to walk." That's sympathy. But when you can actually put yourself in those shoes, walk that same path that they walked, walk alongside them, or be able to have walked parts of that same path with them, that's empathy. Being able to be empathetic and put yourself in that situation to understand, man, that is actually really hard. That is actually something extremely difficult to go through. Yeah, I don't get it. Yeah, I don't understand it. Man, if I did that, I would feel this way. I'd feel this way. And it's like, yeah, man, I do feel that way. That is how I feel about it. That is what my life has been up to this point. And so that's what I think is empathy. And if we teach our kids how to have that empathy, how to have that understanding, how to not have any prejudice, I think is a huge part of it too. That goes
Right.
into not to lack of empathy in today's society, because again, hate is taught. Hate is 100% taught. You see pictures and videos all the time. I've seen it firsthand. When my daughter was in preschool, her best friend was this little African American girl.
Mhm.
They didn't see color.
Right.
They saw each other for who they are.
Yep.
They saw each other by name. They had friends. They were friends. That was it. Uh, and so, I'm biracial. My kids are biracial. My kids are mixed race, and so it's something that's really easy. Not easier for me to understand, but it's something that I can see both sides of. To where this hate is 100% taught, because I'm hated by one side. I'm also hated by one side of myself as well at the same time. And so it's if we all just had a little bit more empathy, if we all took a real moment to put ourselves in each other's shoes, to try to mean like, yeah, man, that journey would be extremely hard, and I would feel this way about it while you feel this way about it, and yada yada yada, then the world would be a much better place, and it would be more inclusive. It would be less hateful. It would be less spiteful. We would have less protests going on in the streets. We truly would work to heal this country if we had more empathy. Love and empathy would go a long way to to heal this country, to heal our current situation. And it's because our country clearly doesn't love itself, and our country isn't empathetic toward itself at all. It's all about the next big thing. It's about the next material item. It's all fueled by emotion, and there's a lack of logic and things like that, but it's the wrong emotions. It's all fueled by like anger and hate and spite and all these different feelings, like right, wrong. Like if you're not right, you're wrong. If you're not with me, you're against me,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yep.
We're always against each other in some way, shape, or form, to where we always have division before we even start talking. right? There's always something that divides us before we even start to get to know each other, because we go into every conversation with an assumption, with a bias, with something. We go into it with a stereotype or something in our head already before we even jump into it, versus we don't go into things open-minded. We stop going into conversations open-minded. We stop having open-minded conversations. We stop being open to being wrong and to being proven wrong, to learning something different, to understanding a different point of view. But if we could have a little bit of empathy, understand someone else's point of view, be willing to have an open conversation, then this conversation of inclusion wouldn't exist, because it would already, everything would be inclusive. Everything would
Yep.
be, every child would be included
Right.
in what they do, in their education, in sports, in their different social clubs, in different social groups, kind of thing. And so, yeah, that's without inclusion, with inclusion and with some love and with some empathy, our country would be a completely different place. So,
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. I mean, one of the things I have a tattoo on my arm, on my one arm, it says "Love thy neighbor," because to me that kind of sums it up for me. Just I went to church a lot growing up, and just love your neighbor as yourself. If we all loved our neighbors like we're supposed to, the world would be fine. We wouldn't have any of the stuff that we have going on now. So it sounds simple in practice. It's not as simple as it sounds, but it would do a lot of good for everybody. My next question, I just thought of it while you were talking, is we're both dads, and what I do is advocate for people with disabilities, my daughter for sure, and then others, to be the world to be more inclusive, be better for her. A lot of the times when I go to things, meetings, classes, I mean, if I see another guy there, it's surprising. Why do you think dads, males, aren't kind of there aren't a lot of us in the field like that I work in, or maybe even kind of you work in.
um, I would say because it's just it doesn't pay the bills necessarily. It can, with the right set of needs and whatnot, but also it's just because there's just not a lot of men involved with their kids. You know, just straight up, like there's just not enough men involved with their kids, with their families.
Right.
And so that's a big problem in itself. Men can't be at the table if they're not involved in the picture whatsoever, if they're not even told about the meetings, if they're not told about what's going on. Like they don't know when to show up if they're not told. I
Right.
guarantee if more men were told about these things, then they could figure out a way to make it happen. But a lot of men just don't feel like it's their place. They feel afraid to go there, afraid to be a part of it, because they know that they're going to be a minority, and no one wants to go and be a minority for any way, shape, or form, whether due to race, sex, gender, whatever. Um, and so there's stigma around it. There's fear. There's feeling out of place. There's just not being invited to go. And then there's also the work barriers as well. But if it's your kid and you want to be there and you know about it, you
Yeah.
should be making a concentrated effort to be there, to be a part of it. No ifs, ands, or buts. If you have enough notice, if you have a couple weeks, you can make arrangements. Don't use work as an excuse. Just go and show up, kind of thing. Um, if the moms can do it and the women can do it, you can do it.
Right.
100%. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If the other party can do it, you can do it too. So
Yeah.
don't give me all that. Stop making excuses. So drop the excuses. Drop the oh well, I'm gonna, okay, so what, you're gonna be the only dude there. Great. If you're a single dad, great, lucky you. Um,
Right.
Opportunity knocks. Um, get off the dating apps and go meet someone at these meetings or at these events, kind of things. It'd be much better for you. I
Yeah.
met my now wife. She was my daughter's preschool teacher. I'm unashamed to say that. That I bagged the preschool teacher. No shame in that whatsoever. But those organic connections, or maybe you'll meet another dad there. Maybe you'll meet your
Yeah.
best friend for the next 20 years there. You guys will raise your kids together. You'll meet different parts of your village at these meetings, kind of things. Like, stop being so unwilling. Stop making excuses and go and just do it. Stop being a little baby back. You know what? And go and do the thing. Just go and do it, because it's not that hard. You take action every day in your life.
Right.
There's plenty of reasons not to, but there's more reasons to go. There's more
Yeah.
reasons to be involved, because then you become more informed. It's you want to be a high informed. You want to be a high informed whatever you do. Be a high informed dad. Be a highly informed advocate. Be a highly informed whatever you're doing, right? So that you're highly informed. So when you're there, you feel like, okay, well, no matter what anyone says, I am, of course, gonna listen to understand. There's a big difference between listening to understand and listening to respond. One's a brick, one's a sponge. The listening to understand's a sponge, to where people are pouring into you, you're absorbing it, you're absorbing it, and then you feel confident enough with your knowledge and whatnot to give a high level response, so that you feel like you're part of that place, that you belong. Versus you're just listening to respond, you're gonna look like an idiot, and you're gonna feel like, why did I even go, kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
those are the big differences there, and what part of the reason why I think that
Yeah,
dads
that's
aren't
great.
going.
Yeah, that's great. And you bring up a good point about being notified, because I mean, I work help families with going to IEP meetings and special education process. And if your house is where the parents aren't together, I mean, there's a lot of times when like one parent will get the notice and the other parent doesn't get it. And I think part of that is just the systems they use to like mail stuff where it kind of isn't set up for that. So,
Mhm.
if you're a parent in that situation, you might have to reach out to the teacher more often than you should have to make sure that you are included on everything, or they get it working right. And then the next time something comes out, it's something switch and now it's back to it. So it is frustrating, but that is a good point where you kind of have to do extra work you shouldn't have to sometimes to make sure you are
Yeah.
notified. So that's a great point.
And just because you shouldn't have to do that work doesn't
Yep.
mean you shouldn't be doing it. Like,
Yes,
you
for
still
sure.
need to do it. Like, you still need to
Yep.
show up and be at that meetings. Yes, it's going to be uncomfortable to sit at the same
Yep.
table as your ex-wife, your ex-husband, or
Yep.
whatever, baby mama, baby daddy, whatever you want to call them. It's going to be uncomfortable sitting at those tables and being at those meetings in that room. But so what? Get
Yeah,
over yourself. You're not there for them. You're not there for them. You're
for
not there
sure.
for yourself. You're not there to try to get back together to go hook up after the meeting, right? You're there for your child. You're there
Absolutely.
for your child to support them, because if they're spending time with you and they're spending time with the mother, then you guys both have valuable input that needs to be heard by both of you.
Absolutely.
So in no way, shape, or form should you be saying, "Oh, well, the kid spends most of their time over there, so she can be the one to go." No, you both need to go, because you have valuable insight. You have a voice that needs
Yep.
to be heard in this process too. So,
Absolutely. Why did you start a podcast, and what is your podcast about, and what's your mission with it?
oh man, why I started a podcast. So why I started Young Dad Podcast was because I needed a creative outlet, more or less. I needed an outlet. And me and my brother been talking about it for a long time. I had previously done a sports podcast back in like 2018, 2019. That kind of flamed out. I did better than expected, but it was just something that I never could commit 100% to. And then divorce happened, and then everything kind of went on pause until summer of 2022. And then I was sitting at my cubicle at the place I worked at. I worked at the bank while I was finishing up my undergrad, and the idea just kind of came to me for Young Dad Podcast. The idea, the name, everything, just divine intervention came in, gave me the name and everything that I've been thinking about, praying for. And then it kind of happened where I started down this rabbit hole of podcasting, and just episode after episode after episode. And then 2 years later, 2+ years later, now we're here, 150 episodes out, 150 plus episodes out. At this point, couple rebrands and whatnot. So I started podcasting just because it was what I felt needed to do. I have a voice, and I needed to use it for good.
Right.
Um, God blessed me with the ability to speak at a high level, to be a good speaker and be able to have conversations and not be afraid to have uncomfortable conversations about sensitive topics.
Right.
Blessed with the knowledge and the ability to do so. So I figured I use my gifts. And so that's kind of the why behind the podcast. Name of the podcast, obviously, Young Dad Podcast. You can stream it anywhere you get your podcast. But the mission behind the podcast is to help a million dads or a million parents in some way, shape, or form. Whether that's through laughing, through connection, through community, through the podcast itself, to give them a resource, to give them a conversation, to help them on their fitness journey, their health journey, whatever it is, to maybe give them an outlet, a book to read, something that helps them be better for listening, kind of thing, whatever that may be. So that's the premise behind it. So that's the overall goal with it.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, so whatever they need to get out of it, they find something to get out of it, and they're able to take that and they're able to apply that into their daily life, whether as a man, as a father, as a friend, as a husband, whatever it is, and they're able to apply that in some way, shape, or form that makes them better for it. So,
That's awesome. What is one tip you can share to help our listeners to be more inclusive today? Just something simple. You don't have to go to school for it. You don't have to spend money. Just something simple they can do today to be more inclusive.
um, check your bias. Check your bias at the door. One thing I recently had a conversation with, it's literally the name of a podcast episode, but it's um, the phrase is, you're not better than the people you shop at Walmart with. If you think you're better than the people you're shopping at Walmart with, you're wrong. You're all there. You're all at Walmart. You're all shopping. You're all doing the same thing. You're not better than them. They're all humans. We're all shopping at Walmart because we need to shop at Walmart. It is what it is. And so that would be my one thing. Know that you're not better than the people you shop at Walmart with, and check your bias at the door. Because when you can do that and you can just truly see the people you're shopping at Walmart with as a friend versus foe, maybe they're Republican, maybe they're Democrat, maybe they're black, maybe they're white, maybe they're gay, maybe they're straight, who knows, right? But when you can check your bias and you just see them as people, as human beings that that are just shopping at Walmart, just trying to get by, just like you are, then there's no room for that hate. There's no room for that judgment. There's no room for that bias to exist. There's no room for it to grow further. But when you go into Walmart thinking that you're better than everyone that you're shopping with, than the people working at the check stand and whatnot, or stocking the shelves, that's where these things where inclusivity takes a hit, because it's not true. You're not better than these people. Yeah. You're not anything different. You're not higher, holier than thou, or anything like that. So just check your bias and just remember, like, you're not better than the people you shop at Walmart with. You're not better than the people you're side by side next to in these same stores.
Right.
Kind of thing. No one's made more than another person. We're all created in the same image of the same God, and we're all created the same. We're all created equal. So
that's great. Ready for the last question?
Let's do it.
Do you like spam? Yes or no?
So spam. So I lived in Hawaii for a couple of years. Yep. Love spam in all its variations. Spam musubi from Hawaii from 7-Eleven. Nothing beats it. Nothing beats a spam musubi from 7-Eleven. I do still enjoy spam. I enjoy it in limited amounts, limited fashion. I have some poor memories with spam. But since I've healed from those, my stomach's healed from those. But I do enjoy spam. I do like spam. It's something I eat within moderation, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, the reason I asked that question is I live in Austin, Minnesota, where Hormel's from. So here's the Spam Museum. That's where they make it. So I've been polling every guest, and it's like 50-50. It's pretty close.
I used to poll and keep detailed track of it. I would have to spend so much time to go back and do that research, but I used to poll everyone on my podcast if pineapple goes on pizza or not.
Okay.
And it's a pretty dead heat. I want to say it's probably like a 55-45 for no and 45 for yes. So
isn't that also, don't they call that Hawaiian pizza?
Allegedly. It's not Hawaiian. It's not Hawaiian. It's not what people eat there. So
yeah. Where's the best place for everyone to connect with you?
Best place everyone to connect with me is on probably Instagram, Threads, Meta Properties, at Young Dad Pod. It's the same branding across all the social media. So YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Threads, all the places. Sorry, X, not Twitter. You can also find me at the new revamped website, youngdadpod.com. It's super great. It's been a fun rebrand to get that up and running there. Youngdadpod.com. You'll find all the social medias. You'll find the link to Patreon. You'll find all the links to all the social medias on the homepage. You'll find the blog. You'll find the resources page, which is brand new. The resources page is great. You can find the full transcript of every episode. Additionally, show notes that go accompany it will have different links and different appropriate things that me and the guests may have talked about. And then additionally, you'll find our sponsor page as well, where you can find more of the deals and brands that I work with at the Young Dad Pod. And then, of course, I think that's all the pages for the website. So it's a pretty simple website, pretty easy, quick, easy to navigate. The blog and whatnot. So it's a pretty fun way to keep up with the podcast there. So youngdadpod.com.
That's awesome. Thanks for being on my show today.
Of course, man. Happy to do it. Happy to be here.
Yeah. To all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Inclusive Dad Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, rate, or review the show. Your feedback helps us connect with more champions of inclusion. Remember to share this podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion of inclusion.